Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's Steve Westman, live Audiophile Roundtable. Happy Thanksgiving to my American friends. Hopefully you're not too comatose to watch the show. Hopefully my guests have eaten, I guess, a certain amount of turkey, so they're not too comatose. I'm hoping for that. But anyways, guys, welcome to the show. Welcome back to another live Audiophile Roundtable. I'm Steve Westman, and tonight we are stepping directly into one of the most powerful chapters in modern jazz. And honestly, what a better way to do it with this brand new Rhino HiFi masterpiece. Tonight, we're going to dive deep, guys. John Coltrane, 1960 to 64 masterpiece mono box set. This is Rhino HiFi taking one of the most explosive eras of Coltrane's Atlantic years and presenting it with newly cut mono masters. This is a mono. I think it's the only way to hear this collection is in mono with the French edition artwork and the signature Rhino attention to detail. I think it's elevated the audiophile landscape. It really has. And this set is just not another issue, guys. It's not another collectible. This is a Coltrane statement. And why I say that is because it's Coltrane's centennial, 2026, literally weeks away. This set feels like the perfect way to kick off the celebration, not with nostalgia, but with the reverence of one of the greatest artistic minds of the 20th century. And here's the best part. Tonight, we're joined by two people who understand this project more intimately than anyone else. We've got Patrick Milligan, Senior Director of A&R at Rhino, one of the creative forces who shaped the entire release. Patrick just isn't producing reissues. He's preserving legacies. He's honoring the masters, and he's bringing Coltrane's Atlantic era back into the spotlight in a way that is respectful, bold, and you know what? Absolutely stunning. I spent all day yesterday listening to this box set. Sounds incredible. And of course, alongside Patrick, Syd Schwartz, the writer of all the liner notes of all 6 albums. And I will tell you guys, incredibly detailed liner notes. Syd's writing doesn't just provide context, it gives you a fresh emotional lens to revisit music you thought you already understood. He brings new meaning, new insight, and new stories from a period where Coltrane was literally transforming the language of jazz. So tonight, we put all of that together, the mono mastering, the French cover art, the curation, the future vision of Rhino HiFi. Maybe Patrick has an Easter egg or two on Thanksgiving, we'll see. And most of all, this, I guess, Coltrane shaped generations. So now, if you're a Coltrane fan, if you're a Rhino HiFi fan, if you're a lover of jazz, sound, history, this is your night. Thanksgiving. So pour yourself a beverage, sit back, and let's celebrate the sound, the story, and the spirit of John Coltrane during one of the most productive, creative periods of his life. Let's get them in. Gentlemen, Patrick, Syd Schwartz, welcome.
Happy, Steve.
Hello. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you.
Happy
So I want to jump right into it, Syd. I mean, tell us what your whole role was behind this box set. And I think I got to put it up. I know it's behind you. I've got the box, Patrick. I got it yesterday, and I spent yesterday afternoon into the evening listening to all 6, also reading all the liner notes. And we know very detailed liner notes, Syd, and I wanted to thank you for that. I know Patrick's a workhorse on you. He probably needed you to get this done within like a day, so I don't know how you would have done that, but thank you for this. It's incredible.
2 days.
It's 2 days. Wow.
2 days, 10 minutes. If you want to really be active, 2 days, 10 minutes.
What do you Patrick makes you clock in your time, or what is what happens?
Yeah, basically, we've got a private app on the Apple Watch, and if I take my eye off the ball on anything I'm writing for him,
it alerts me.
Yeah.
Well, I will say too that
yeah.
We assign these liner notes, and I'm constantly like checking in with people, going, "How are we doing? We're going to make that date." Not with Syd. He was on it.
He was on it.
He never makes the date.
Well, then for Syd, writing the liner notes, Syd.
No, he didn't.
I did make it. Yes, I always make my dates. Always make my.
You always make it. So when you're digging into the era of Coltrane, what was the one insight you discovered that you were surprised even by your own standards of knowledge when you're digging into this box? What did you find?
Look, whether I'm digging into Coltrane or Miles or Wayne Shorter or anyone I'm writing with. I mean, look, first of all, happy Thanksgiving. Anyone who's watching and celebrating. To anyone who isn't celebrating, hope you're having a great day. Thank you to Patrick for reaching out and making the call. First of all, it was really an exciting call to get. as it is, anytime you get a call like this. I mean, to write for an artist like John Coltrane, it's a heavy responsibility and a terrific opportunity. So you kind of read what those who wrote before you have written, and you kind of think about, so what has changed between what was written before and where you are now, and is there additional context to bring? The music clearly hasn't changed, but people have changed. New generations have come into the hobby. It's been fascinating, of course. Steve, you've been running this channel. How long have you been running this channel? How many episodes is this for you?
Oh my gosh, a lot. 4 or 5 years, over 300, almost 400 episodes, probably.
Right, and a lot has changed. I mean, you and I have talked a few times. You and Patrick have talked a bunch. Mm-hmm. You've covered a lot of ground here, and things have changed a lot about the hobby. And I think if anything, the notion that all jazz fans are these kind of weazened old guys with pipes sitting by their stereos by the fireplace on Thanksgiving Eve going, yes, Coltrane.
Do they need scotch as well? Probably in a cigar.
Likely an adult beverage of some sort, but that has changed a lot. And whether you head over to whosampled.com and just type in John Coltrane, and you see the wealth of very creative modern folks in the hip hop vertical who are mining trained for samples, or you look at any number of modern jazz artists who are continuing to channel Coltrane, either stylistically covering what he composed, and then you just look at the sheer scope of what Train accomplished in his very short life. I mean, it's so sad that he was gone so soon. But I made a few notes earlier. And to your question about what did you discover, or what was new, I think there's an interesting piece here that Coltrane was an artist that I always found was out of time. That he would record a whole bunch of music for a label, and then he would hop to another label, and then the label before him would start releasing a whole bunch of stuff. So when you would go see John Coltrane at a club. And for instance, during the middle of his Atlantic period, he was doing a residency at the Half Note. And during that residency at the Half Note in October of 1960, he recorded a 3-day marathon in October that produced 3 records worth of material for Atlantic. And it was kind of like, well, I'm working, but I'm going to, duck into the studio and do these things. But not all of those records came out during the period that he was signed to Atlantic. Some of them came out when he had hopped over to Impulse, his next label. So
kind of like what happened with Prestige too.
Same thing happened with Prestige. So you would go see Coltrane in a club, and you would kind of hear one thing going on, and I always wondered, like, what would it be like to have seen with the Village Vanguard in 61? And then you go into a record store and you buy something that Prestige just kind of hustled out there, and it's labeled as new in the bin, but it sounds nothing like what you just saw in the club. It must have been bewildering, to be a Coltrane fan, in that era, from say, 58 through, the early 60s, when it was just this bewildering array of product. I mean, he was with Prestige a year and 7 months, 12 records, Atlantic 2 years, 4 months, 8 albums, and then Impulse, almost 6 years, 55 sessions, 25 albums. I mean, talk about
that's some production.
I mean, man,
yeah,
that's incredible.
The guy was prolific for sure. I mean, basically, he never put his horn down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you can kind of see a logical progression if you think about them in the order in which they were recorded, but the order in which they were released does not match the order in which they were recorded.
Exactly. Yeah, so the progression gets a little blurred, but I would agree too. I mean, I think to your point that if you went to see him in 1960 or 61 and you just bought a new Prestige album, you'd be a bit bewildered, because from the beginning, Giant Steps was such a left turn for him and such a new phase, very different from what he was doing at Prestige. Kind of the same way it was, when he went to Impulse, which was more of a evolving thing, I think. But I think, you see a lot of evolution in the Atlantic years too. But as you say, there's a plethora of stuff from like one specific time period that got kind of, feathered out over time. So
I think what's super interesting about the Atlantic period is that it encompasses kind of a bunch of what he was doing in Prestige. He kind of, picked some of that stuff up and brought it with him. He evolved it and did some even more interesting things at Atlantic that he hadn't tried before. And then you can hear echoes of what he would kind of continue to evolve on Impulse with Ole, which was the last thing he recorded with Atlantic. So it's this, I call it a pivot point. I think in one of the notes that I wrote, and I've certainly used that expression in describing Coltrane's Atlantic period before, and it's why putting these particular records in this kind of one box and calling it specifically those years and labeling it in that era, it allows you to both experience it as the albums were released, but also understand that chronology, that one period, that marathon session, Steve, that you described. That I listened to everything in kind of one shot. Kind of gives you that evolutionary vibe. That's a great way to hear it.
So another thing about this is that why do you both feel the mono mixes capture like Coltrane differently, sort of emotionally or musically, and compared to like the stereo presentations?
I think that's, to some extent probably a controversial thing, and different people will land in different places. But I do think a lot of people agree, me amongst them, that the mono records just are, there's just something about it that's very direct. The stereo records are very early stereo. So they're kind of wonky in terms of
more of a quality thing.
Yeah, and I like the stereo ones too. I mean, that's, the first Coltrane record I bought was Giant Steps, and I guarantee it was in stereo, and it didn't offend me. But hearing them in mono, it just seems fuller. And it just seems more focused, I would say.
And we've talked about this in my other shows as well, sort of the golden age of audiophile or golden age of vinyl. I mean, we're really getting spoiled because now we're getting to hear these recordings perfectly the way they should be. Plus, we have some of the best equipment, most of us that watch this show, whereas maybe 70 years ago, 60 years ago, the equipment or the stereos weren't that great. I mean, sure, some of them had hi-fi, but no one was listening to stuff that we have today. So that makes it even much more of an experience, right?
Some people did, I would imagine. And,
of course it did.
With varying degrees, but it's, I would agree that it's, people are more into it now. And I've talked to a lot of people, Kevin Gray and Bernie Grunman amongst them. Kevin, for sure, the system that he's got is so much more advanced than what people were using, 50, 60 years ago. And Bernie has said too that, people pressing records, it's become more of a craft. It's just more well done. I think we've moved away from the
mass production.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many millions of records you had to make to get it to market to feed what people, what things were going to sell. And now it's a little bit more of a craft. Mm-hmm. And I would say, and Bernie has echoed this too, that he feels the same as I do. And I know there's a lot of controversy and people that feel differently, but I think Optimal is at the top of their game. And Bernie thinks so too. And it's just, because they've had many, many years of doing this stuff. And it just sounds really great. So I think modern LP releases are just something better than what was done in the past. So people with good equipment that can, appreciate that, it's really a joyful time.
So I'm going to get another question in, Patrick, because it's the French covers. I've read some like it, some don't. So the decision to use the French covers, I think it's quite bold. Well, what was the thinking behind that? What were the choices and what of the alternate designs? And so, what did it reveal about Coltrane?
Yeah, it's interesting that in France, they issued a lot of the Atlantic albums with different covers. Excuse me. And it's something that's become kind of a collector's thing. And there are a lot of people I know that are into this, and people have said, hey, you should put out, this thing with the French cover. And a couple of years ago, I did a record store day release of a John Lee Hooker Atlantic album, and I used the French cover, but we had the English liner notes and everything, so it was kind of a hybrid. And we were talking at work one day about things that had alternate covers, and I said, and this is when we were already talking about doing the hi-fi set, and that made me think of these French covers. I was like, how cool would it be to do these with the French covers, kind of speaking to those people that are collectors of this. It makes it unique. And as you well know, we have the French cover here, but if you open it up, you've got the original LP, the US LP. So you get both. So yeah, I just thought it was something kind of unique. There are again a lot of people that collect those covers, and I think it's just a way to differentiate it and make it something kind of special for people. So I love it myself, but I'm sure there are people that think it's weird.
So Jason was asking on the mono, is it a fold down from stereo, or is it a full track?
Full track.
There you go. There you go, Jason, from the horse's mouth. I guess greetings from the UK. Happy Black Friday, RST. Happy Thanksgiving. So
wow, you're up late.
There you go. I guess all of your coworkers at Rhino must be pretty busy, even for Friday's Black Friday. You guys are probably had to get a lot organized before holidays.
Yeah, all our work's been done for a while on that. So. Now it's up to the people that work in record stores.
There you go. So, Patrick, there's a huge difference between just assembling albums and curating a box, right? What was the guide in philosophy deciding what belonged, sequence, presentation? I mean, was it pretty much you decided, I'm going to get like you said, you wanted the French album covers and just the way it looked and the sort of the sleekness of it?
That kind of came along a little bit later. We sort of decided to do this mono box, again, just because Coltrane, obviously, in our world, in our catalog, is the gem of our jazz catalog. And, it's just somebody that deserves to be honored with a good presentation of something like this. And as you mentioned, the centennial is coming up, which amazingly, so is the Miles Davis centennial.
Incredible.
The two biggest jazz legends of modern times have a centennial in the same year, which is pretty incredible. But so we've been talking to the Coltrane estate about doing things, and this was something that came up that we really wanted to pursue. And again, the mono, because we just felt like this is a good presentation for hi-fi. Obviously, we had done a couple of previous Coltrane hi-fis that were stereo, Coltrane Sound and Ole. And at the time that Coltrane Sound was one of our inaugural releases with the Cars. And the reason I chose that album is just like, well, Giant Steps and Favorite Things are, clearly the big standouts in the Atlantic catalog. But they had recently both had deluxe editions done. And I thought, well, let's give some love someplace that doesn't get a lot of love. And I've always loved Coltrane Sound. I just think that's, obviously a record that was put together later from previous sessions, but I just think it's always been kind of an overlooked album. So I really wanted to push to do that. So we didn't want to double up on that. And we just thought the mono box would be a good way to present this. And I will tell you too, that probably people are wondering why we didn't include the Milt Jackson and Don Cherry records. But to me, those collaboration albums they're not so much Coltrane albums, because in both cases, he's really kind of playing with their bands. Like the Don Cherry record is kind of him with Ornette Coleman's group. And so I just thought these are really the core of his artistry in terms of him as a leader and really driving his vision. So that was the reason for that selection.
So Syd, on the liner notes, like liner notes today obviously have a function, right? Almost like a documentary. The way you've written for all 6 of these is sort of the documentary of this box set. So they have to guide people through, as I'm sure that's the way you approached it. So knowing your audience, both the audience and the listener and the hardcore Coltrane obsessive fans, I mean, how did you go about this project? A lot of research, a lot of hours spent, probably.
Yeah, a lot of research, a lot of hours, a lot of listening. Those who wrote before me and listened before me, understanding what it was that they were trying to say. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. I don't want to tell anyone what they should hear, what they're supposed to hear, how they're supposed to listen. I think your points before about, mono and why mono, I completely agree that these records are best served listening to them in mono. I would say that there are really just a handful of records I feel that way about. I feel really strongly, for instance, about Giant Steps, that it sounds not only better in mono, it feels better in mono. It hits different in mono. It was not my first Coltrane record. The first Coltrane record I bought actually was Coltrane Plays the Blues, was this one here, on recommendation from a colleague, a coworker, and I was working in music wholesale at the time for the company that's now Alliance Entertainment, but this was years before that, and he was my supervisor. And I asked him, which Coltrane record I should start with, and he suggested Coltrane Plays the Blues, and which, looking back, was kind of an interesting suggestion. The reason that he suggested Coltrane Plays the Blues was, he says, because it gives you an opportunity to appreciate John Coltrane as a player and a composer without the baggage of him being John Coltrane. And I don't think I fully understood what he meant until some years later, and understood the gravity of records like Giant Steps and A Love Supreme and et cetera, and what you would expect, from John Coltrane, because obviously, while that record doesn't necessarily hit, the exploratory heights or the legendary, harmonic impossibilities of, I think I call Giant Steps, him scaling harmonic Everest in the notes here. That it's more straightforward in ways, and really allows you to hear, focus on him as a player, focus on him as a composer, without the expectation of, my life is supposed to be changed by listening to A Love Supreme, or I'm supposed to be so knocked out by Giant Steps, I'm never going to want to, pick up a saxophone or an instrument of any sort ever again, because it's just that impossible.
That's a brilliant, informed recommendation, I would say. Well, my introduction came from when I was in high school. I was a sax player, played alto sax and soprano sax in jazz band and all the way through college. But my music teacher gave me a transcription of Giant Steps. And I took it home and sat and played it and thought, wow, this is really cool. I got to go get the record. So I went out and bought the record and came home and listened to it. And was like, oh my God, he's playing it really fast. But that was my introduction. It's just like, I thought that was just sitting there playing through that. It's like, wow, this is incredible. And so that just blew me away.
Well, that's the thing about transitional energy, right? So the set really covers a crucial transition period, Syd, right? Where do you think both Coltrane was mentally and musically during those sessions?
So, the thing about Train, and it's really the same thing about Miles, interesting that they both have centennials that we're going to be celebrating next year. They were always in transition. They were both such restless, creative,
very
forward-thinking musicians. I kind of chuckle now when you read what someone writes. Oh, this was their transitional album. Well, they were all transitional records, so yay. But his mindset. He kind of comes into his Atlantic period having had this incredibly prolific period with Prestige, but Prestige didn't have the prestige. They didn't have what Atlantic brought to the table. Atlantic brought resources. They had the Erdigans and their love of jazz and their power as label executives. They had Tom Dowd in terms of production and studio access and time and resources and money and a willingness to give him the chance to go in and do his thing. They had trust, and an artist needs that kind of trust from a label to get it done, because otherwise it's just a constant headbutt, and a lot of the energy goes to the wrong place. So I think he felt empowered.
And it kind of makes you wonder what direction he was getting from Prestige, that he was tending to do more kind of standards and a little bit more straightforward stuff, that by the time he got to Atlantic, immediately he was making a pretty left turn. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it seems to me that that's probably his personal progression. Yeah. But it kind of makes you wonder. It's like maybe Prestige was not really open to that sort of innovation and doing something a little more outside.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's aside. Patrick is 100% right, actually. And I think in addition to that, and I wasn't there, obviously, none of us were there, but my understanding is that Prestige was not big on paying artists to rehearse or kind of work things through. And part of the reason for standards is that they were standard. Everybody knew them. So getting everybody into a room and saying, okay, Autumn Leaves, 1, 2, 3, 4, it was not a big deal. Everybody knew where to go. So you could get a session done fairly quickly and efficiently, and it optimized the cost, and all that was fine. But it also meant that you had an awful lot of records with a lot of the same tunes on them. So he came to Atlantic and had an opportunity to grow as a composer and experiment with a lot of different stuff.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that's very supported by the number of alternate early takes of Giant Steps from different sessions leading up to the final version. It's like he didn't go in and just do it in one day like he probably would have been required to do at Prestige, but he worked through it in several different sessions until he got it where he wanted it. And it's an amazing progression to hear that.
And that very first Giant Step session, which was it Cedar Walton on piano? I forget who was part of that first hit. He scrapped. He was like, "This is not. What I hear in my head, I'm not getting down."
It's not this. Yeah. It's kind of like what I feel about Charlie Parker when you listen to a lot of early Charlie Parker stuff. Is he's so much beyond his rhythm section and band that it's sometimes it's like a little hard to listen to, because it's like they're so corny and square, and he's so like off and
Well, that leads me to this, right, Patrick? That was really good. The sessions had different rhythm sections, right, at different times. So how do you hear the band shaping the overall feel and the momentum across this whole box, across all 6 records?
Well, I think his band, once he got through those initial early sessions, is mostly consistent.
Yeah.
Obviously, McCoy Tyner comes in at some point, which is a huge addition. And somebody I think that really kind of empowered him to kind of get more, when you think of some of those impulse sessions that McCoy Tyner is on, is like, it's a really big part of that. So it's an evolution. And I think, as Syd said, you sort of see it leading up to where he went with Impulse. And even at Impulse, it's like, he didn't go there and do a Love Supreme. It's like, it kind of worked up to things, and he was constantly, searching and being adventurous. And that's part of what the great part of his artistry is, as you said with Miles Davis too, is these are two people that were never stagnant. They were always moving into something different and wanting to try to advance. It's kind of like the Beatles in a way. It's like, and I think that might have been less conscious in their place, but I think that, Miles maybe, Coltrane certainly embraced a lot of world music and, spirituality and things like that he infused in his music. And I would say that, clearly Miles lived a lot longer, so he saw more. Yeah. But Miles was paying attention to rock and roll and Sly and the Family Stone and things that informed, you think about Doo-Bop, which is really not my favorite Miles Davis album, but it's very hip hop based. So the guy was always like paying attention. And it'd be really interesting to see what Coltrane would have done if he'd lived as long as Miles. I don't think it would have been the same kind of thing, but it would have been very interesting, just the various things that he was bringing into his music. So
speaking of that, so a lot of listeners were introduced to Coltrane with, Blue Train or Love Supreme, and maybe they haven't lived through these early mono albums. So again, for someone that maybe is on the fence of maybe wanting to pick up these records, what's your pitch on them? Like, why should they have them if they've been introduced to Coltrane through Love Supreme?
These are key albums in his artistry. I think they're all wonderful records. They're great listens, great playing, great innovation. And I would say that this set, I have to say I'm very proud. Rachel Gutek, our designer that did this, made this beautiful, bold box. We were being sort of pushed.
Put it right up. What's it?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's actually my favorite Rhino HiFi box so far. But I think this is a great way to experience his music. It's if you only know Blue Train and Love Supreme, there's a lot here to enjoy. Right. There's a lot here that tells you about where he came from. And, Kevin Gray's mastering and Optimal's pressing, they sound gorgeous.
That's a good segue, too, because Rix was asking this, and this is interesting. How did the titles that are the same from the Coltrane and Mono Atlantic box from 2016 sound compared to the new Mono set, for example?
Very good question, and I actually wanted to address that because, yes, that was done by my good friend in the UK, Florence Halfon, who was overseeing a lot of Atlantic jazz stuff for many years. Great job. So that was before I came back to Rhino in 2018, so I was not around when that happened. But my sense is that they were probably cut in the UK, so they were probably cut from digital files, and somehow there were some mono masters that they weren't able to find at the time, including My Favorite Things, that I'm not sure why they couldn't find. So that set is missing a couple of the core Coltrane leader albums, though it does have the 2 collaboration albums, and it has at least Coltrane Legacy, I think, one of the records that came out in the 70s of alternate takes that for some reason came out in mono. I don't know why. There you go. So this is very different in that it was very definitely cut from the master tapes. We did find them all. We didn't include the collaboration albums or the later alternate take albums, but there may be something that could happen with that at some later.
Oh, I haven't asked about Easter egg yet.
Well,
so
there's
we can
one.
get it. There's one right there. So,
well, I mean, we're trying to do some Coltrane stuff for the centennial, and I will say, because this is probably going to come up, people will notice that we recently did a Rhino Reserve of Giant Steps, which is stereo, and honestly, the main reason we did that was that Giant Steps is always a good seller. And our inventory system was telling us that we were due for a reorder, that we needed to do a repress to get stock up. And we thought this is a really good opportunity to just bring this up a level and put it out as a reserve, recut it from the tape, and make a really nice quality piece. So that's what we did. So you can get the stereo and the mono.
There you go. I like this. So Sean Gardner, Atlantic was not afraid to take a risk on things ahead of its time. Definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They signed Guess and Led Zeppelin, for crying out loud.
Right. Good point.
Atlantic has an incredibly deep well of jazz. I know, particularly in the modern audiophile era, I Blue Note and a number of others tend to get a lot of the attention, but Atlantic's got an amazing roster of titles.
It really does.
So again, props to the Erdogan brothers, who signed Yes and Zeppelin and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Genesis. Yeah. You could go on and on and on. But their start and their initial true love was jazz and R&B. That's what got them in the door.
Well, look too how Jerry Wexler
Yes.
courted Aretha Franklin to come to the label and completely turned her career around. I mean, what she was doing at Columbia just wasn't resonating, and that stuff is good, actually. If you go back and listen, there's a lot of stuff that's good from that era, but he let her kind of be her, and just turned her into a superstar. It's like that doesn't happen that often.
So Patrick,
you had Bill, you had some Bill Evans records on the on the label, Freddie Hubbard.
Yep.
Woody Shaw. What else? John Lewis, Jean-Luc Ponty, Eddie Harris, Charles Lloyd.
Tons of modern jazz quartet. I mean,
the Art Farmer, Jim Hall. That'd be a great box set. Sorry.
Yeah.
More Easter eggs. Patrick.
How about that Lee Konitz Warren Marsh album too? That's a great record.
We got a pair of Duke Pearson records that have been out of print for ages.
Yeah, exactly. Why were the albums with Don Cherry and Milt Jackson excluded from the set? Well, I did mention this before, but the main reason was I felt like those two records weren't really core Coltrane albums because they were really more those two artists' groups, Milt Jackson's group and kind of more his style, and the Don Cherry record is really the Ornette Coleman group mostly. So I just felt like this presented it in a way that showed Coltrane's artistry as a leader and his vision as opposed to just being a collaborator. Hopefully that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. So what's the biggest misconception about this era of Coltrane, Syd?
So I guess I'll go back to before I was really much of a jazz fan, I guess an early on in jazz. I was just kind of getting my head around it in middle of college. I had transferred to State University of New York at SUNY Purchase, where I was one of a handful of sociology students, and I was surrounded by music majors. And I got to start to know some of the folks who were playing jazz, playing classical, and I went in with a whole bunch of preconceptions that it was going to be the jazz guys who were these like crazy, insane party animals, and the classical folks were going to be like really like kind of stuck up and rigid. And it was the polar opposite. It was the classical guys who were like hanging out on this giant bronze Henry Moore sculpture, tripping on acid at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. And it was the jazz guys who were constantly booking the practice rooms, and they'd be the ones who you'd occasionally see like storming out in tears or in just frustration. And it was when I first started hearing about Giant Steps, that, it would be part of their whatever, their final or their midterm or their whatever, that they had to do something tied to Giant Steps. And I started to get the idea that, wow, there's some, I thought like, yes, King Crimson, ELP, like they're the be all end all of everybody who ever played music. And I started to get the idea that maybe that was kind of an immature, post-adolescent worldview on musicianship. Was just sheer virtuosity, and of course Giant Steps to a degree played into that. But then I started listening more and hanging out with people and hearing what was going on. And I think one of the misconceptions was, oh, my favorite things, isn't that like kind of a silly Broadway song? And then someone's like, no, you got to sit down and you got to hear this. And they didn't play me initially the Atlantic version. They played me this crazy live in Japan, like 40-minute version that started off with this wild bass solo. And I was like, it sounds like the Von Trapp family be throwing themselves off the cliff hearing this. Like, not
anything that starts with the bass solo is not
good. So it made no sense to me. But then when I got the album, I was like, wow, this is like this really kind of radical reinvention of this kind of popular song. And it started to make more sense to me. It started to sink in. And I still think there are folks where it's like, what do you mean my favorite things? What kind of, what are you talking about? And I think suddenly people hear it and they're like, oh, I kind of get it now. Like it's taking popular music today and reinventing it.
He made it his own. And I think he turned it into this modal thing that was very much kind of his sort of approach at the time, and kind of what Miles was doing too, and took it and transformed it into something else. And I would say too that, as you said, your first hearing was a live version from Japan. How many times that song was a pretty permanent part of his repertoire for the rest of his career. It was very defining to him, I think, because he sort of felt that he found something in that tune that let him explore something on a continual basis. And of course, worth noting too that was his first real application of using a soprano sax too, which became something a bit more of a signature throughout the career into the Impulse years too. So
I also think in ways it was, I note this in the liner notes too, kind of quietly subversive in a way. Like, that movie is a good deal more political than it was getting credit for at the time. And I think, Train, who was, as opposed to Miles, was decidedly apolitical. I mean, he really was not out there a lot, talking about a lot of politics, or nearly, not that he wasn't at all, but not in an in-your-face way. That this was a quiet way of leveraging a little political activity into his music.
Yeah, it's kind of subversive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like taking an instrument that hadn't really been in jazz since probably Sidney Bechet, right?
That is correct.
It was really almost more of like clarinet and just kind of more old trad jazz. So to take that and use it in a modal sense, just everything about that is just so innovative and just groundbreaking. And I think that's why it stuck with him throughout his career, because that was a key moment for him.
Yeah. It was Miles who gave him the sax.
Miles deserves a lot of credit for a lot of things.
So I'll ask Patrick and both Syd and Patrick both. I mean, so do you have a personal favorite track in mono on this set? Something that just hits differently than maybe the stereo?
Equinox,
Patrick?
I'm going to go with Equinox too.
Yeah.
That is.
But why? What are you hearing? What is it about the two different sounds?
Well, to me, I mean, first of all, it's just one of his most brilliant compositions and something that really gets covered a lot. I listen to to K-Jazz out here, our local jazz station, which is quite good, I must say. And I'm amazed at how many different cover versions I hear of that song. But again, I think these mono versions are just more direct. They're fuller. They're just... The stereo versions, while they have, some pleasantries about them, it just kind of doesn't pull together as well. There's something more powerful when you hear it in mono.
Syd?
Equinox is, I've got kind of my short list of, desert island, jazz compositions and performances, and Equinox is up there. Maybe this is a slightly silly way of thinking about the first time it impacted me, but it's the truth. When my wife and I were early on in our dating, before we were, I think this goes back to before we were married, we used to watch, there was a television show called ER, it was like our medical drama. She's a physician. And we'd watch it on together, and every episode was like the same. There was some impossible medical thing, and they wheel the guy in, and the music gets all dramatic, and they talk about what they were going to do, and I'd be like, oh my god, and she'd be like, yeah, insurance isn't going to cover it, whatever. There was a lead character at the time, a Dr. Benton, who was kind of this hard ass, really good surgeon, but like not a people person. And there's an episode when he gets bad news about his child, who he hears is deaf. And that's a diagnosis that he gets. And it's this like incredibly weighty moment where you see this guy who's very tough exterior. You absolutely never see any affect or emotionality about him. And you can see the impact of this on him. And the music bed is Equinox as he kind of absorbs this information. And I remember just kind of like getting this, I'm like, what is this feeling? I'm kind of like getting in my chest, listening to this music, watching this dumb show, but whoever the music supervisor was.
Well,
yeah.
I love moments of music supervision brilliance. And they stand out. I mean, one for me too, like you, I can't watch it and not get in tears, is the end of Rushmore when they have Ooh La La when they're dancing.
You've told me that before. Yeah.
That just really gets to me.
Yeah.
And I think as heavy as that song hit for me for all those years, the very first time I heard it in mono, it was just a vibration here that I hadn't felt before in stereo. It hadn't existed for me. I didn't even know it could exist. And the mono ever since then, the stereo doesn't.
Yeah.
For me, with Equinox,
so
Patrick,
powerful in mono,
it is
sure.
Very dark, smoky, right? Hypnotic modal, maybe that sort of hypnotic modal blues, sort of that classic nighttime train.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
At the same time, there's
haunting.
There's a determination underneath it, though, that it's not defeatist. It's not. It's blues, but it's not necessarily depressing or sad. There's been there, but I'm gonna,
Well put.
Yeah, I don't know. You either get it or you don't with Equinox. So,
So I'm going to address something.
I agree. It's like if there's a song that's going to hit you,
Equinox.
that one has a lot of emotional impact.
The box is numbered 2000, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
2 or 3. I can never keep track.
Okay. And then single releases as well.
Yes, there will be unnumbered
singles. So sort of like what you've done before.
Basically, yes.
I like Chris. He's asking, Patrick, Ray Charles, Rhino HiFi, love it.
I like that idea. I don't know that we sell Ray Charles as well anymore, but I will say that some of those records are really well recorded.
Mm-hmm.
The genius of Ray Charles. I mean, they're beautiful sounding records. So I wouldn't rule that out. Maybe it's something that would be a reserve at some point, but yeah, I'd love to do more Ray Charles. That stuff is great.
I like this. Rick's is asking for a Wilson Pickett box set.
Oh man, do I love Wilson Pickett.
I know.
I would love to do that. I have to say, I've worked at Rhino on and off since the early 90s. And when I first came to Rhino, we had first made the Atlantic deal, and we did a lot of Wilson Pickett and Ray Charles and Aretha and, all this stuff. And it did reasonably well, but it's just kind of, as time has gone on, that sort of stuff has kind of had a bit of a shelf life issue. And I think some of that is fans of that music are, getting older, and part of our job and what we're always trying to do at Rhino is to keep introducing this music to younger generations and making them appreciate it and keeping the legacy going.
And that's a big thing that I'm talking about in a lot of my shows, right? Is like getting to the next generation, the next demographic. Because I mean, you got 5 or 10 years max, and I'm not trying to be dark here, but the baby generation is slowly disappearing as we get further into every year, and that's just fact. We know that. It's now, as a record label, you guys have to look at, okay, who are we going to go after that's going to like jazz, since our, in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the people that are buying these jazz records probably aren't alive. And I'm not, again, we've seen a real resurgence in the jazz vinyl sales. I think it's probably better than it ever has, right? Ever. And is that a demographic? Is that an age thing? Do you guys see that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you had somebody that posted a comment a bit ago that said, I think they were 16 and had been a jazz head for a long time.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. I mean, that's kind of how I was, because I was
same with me, right?
And
I was in bands,
was a jazz fan, and I started getting into Charlie Parker and stuff like that. But I hope that continues. I mean, I think there are a lot of young musicians out there still. There's a lot of great jazz programs in schools that promote that kind of stuff. There's amazing jazz bands that you hear at these competitions and things, these high school bands that are just incredible. So there are still young people out there that are being exposed to this. And hopefully, I don't think, many high school students can afford a hi-fi box set, but
well, and that's the thing, right? Again, getting back to it, I appreciate, how people that are watching the show buying these records. It's a big investment. It's a big commitment of money, and they're definitely doing it because it's a hobby and they love it and they want the best sounding records. I mean, that's what you as an A&R are trying to put out with the Hi-Fi series, obviously. And getting back to something interesting as well is, Kevin Gray doing the mastering and cutting these from the master tape. I mean, his machine, his equipment is, like you were mentioned at the very beginning, there's nothing like it out there.
Yeah, he's built this system up himself and refined it over the years, and just, the whole tube analog aspect of it. I mean, he's got it down. I mean, he's got great ears, he's got a great system, and it's just unbelievably, fantastic what he does, and people respond to it. I mean, it's palpable.
So my point was in sort of the demographic, we'd be losing a large demographic in 5 to 10 years. Will that newer generation make up for it in terms of getting into jazz, because there's so many more options than ever before in the music scene? Not like it was in the 1980s or in the 1960s when you had, really it wasn't as many options, not as much population. And now today there's, with streaming and everything that's going on, it's one of those things that I think the younger people need to get involved in vinyl. I want to see it move forward in the next 10, 15 years. And my concern is I don't want it to die off. That's the big thing for me, because I'm obviously a huge proponent of it, Patrick.
I do think there's a lot of younger music fans that are into vinyl and LPs. I don't know if they're really into audiophile records and big expensive box sets, but that's encouraging to me, that if people are still exploring and trying to show their support of music by buying records, that, this is the stuff that's going to resonate with them and that they'll be part of that audience. But, it's hard to say. I mean, I think, as Syd said, in our catalog, I mean, between Warner and primarily Atlantic, we have a lot of great jazz, but it's really just not that easy to sell it anymore,
So it's a money thing, clearly. I mean, obviously a record label has to make money, profit to pay the bills. I get all that. So it's supply demand.
Frustration. There are a lot of records I've fought for over the years that just, it's like people get to say, I know you're passionate about it, and this is great, but it's like, it's not going to be easy to sell. And I've had to let go of a few things. I finally got one over the line, and I don't know if it's announced. So here's your Easter egg.
Okay, go for it.
We are putting out a Rhino Reserve of Tower of Powers back to Oakland.
Oh, nice.
Which is one of my all-time favorite records. And as Syd, is a great sounding record, right?
Yes, I do. That is a fantastic, nice guess.
When can folks expect that?
I think it's in January.
Thank you. He just didn't disappoint me, Patrick. He laid a good Easter egg on Thanksgiving. I love that.
It was more than an Easter egg. It was a full-on egg.
That was a full-on egg. Fully hard-boiled. I'm liking some of the comments. I mean, some of the folks here took me into my early 20s to get into jazz. Here I am at 30 years later. So again, who knows? There might be this huge evolution of music where, today's youth are listening to The Weeknd and all this R&B and rap and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, in 50 years from now, when we're probably long gone, this whole thing happens where they're back into the whole jazz scene. I mean, that could happen in a couple of generations as well. I mean, if you want to think about it that way, anything could happen. Who knows what the future brings, right?
Anything could happen, but I would say at this point in time, it really is our job to try to bring those younger people in and get them interested.
And that's what I'm always constantly trying to do. I want the younger generation. I mean, that's, going back to why I think the Beatles are re-releasing the anthology and putting it out on Disney. They want to get a new demographic in, right? Just like you were saying, Patrick, you want to watch that with your son. I mean, you want to have that experience with your own kids, right?
I have to tell you, both of my kids are home from college this week for Thanksgiving, and my son saw that I got the Coltrane box yesterday, and he came out last night and he's like, "Dad, can I listen to Giant Steps?"
Cool.
I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So he took it in his room and put it on the turntable, listened to it. So it's like there's another one kind of going at least. But I think the Beatles thing is interesting because I read something too with all this sort of press around the anthology coming around, and I can tell you my son is definitely a product of this, and I'm a huge Beatles fan, so both of my kids have gotten into the Beatles largely through me. But when the Get Back special came on, we all watched that, and my son Emmett's watching it again and going through it like a second or third time. And what I read was that show brought in a lot of younger people, the Get Back thing, and that really interested people and got them, that kind of like reactivated a younger audience with the Beatles. And I think the Beatles are one of those things that's always going to be around.
Timeless. Absolutely.
It's like Beethoven. It's like the music's timeless. It's clearly really high quality, and people are always going to be into it. So and I would say, because I'm such a huge Beatles fan, I can't put anything else in that category. But with other stuff that we get to work on, like Ramones and Doors and stuff like that, that stuff constantly resonates with a younger audience. It's always bringing people in. And that's really exciting. It's like we're always grooming new fans, and that's what we're trying to do. So
it's where, from a classic rock anyway perspective, Steely Dan has become such an incredibly important gateway drug for jazz in bringing new demographics in, because it's such an easy crossover for any number of reasons. And those records are also incredibly well recorded. They've also had their audiophile moment over the last couple of years, after it being really difficult to find good, clean copies in the wild for a reasonable price. All of this said, and look, I've got a giant wall of vinyl behind me. There's plenty of vinyl, and there's no shortage of vinyl around here. But I'm a big Roon guy. I've got 16 terabytes of digital files in my home rig. My speakers sound great with high-res digital, and a Qobuz subscription is, if that's the thing that is going to seduce someone into hearing new music that they love, and that pulls them into a good direction, then I'm all for it. If at some point they decide to take the plunge into the vinyl ecosystem, I think that's great. And I hope it happens, because I think that's helpful for especially for folks like Patrick and his team, who all work hard to bring these things across the finish line. And I think the amount of effort and time and heartache that goes into it, having sat on Patrick's side of the desk for a couple of decades, few people really know what it takes.
So that is an interesting that is interesting. And let's get back to, because we talk about this a lot. A lot of people on forums will post it. They're like, why can't Patrick get Zeppelin? Why can't so-and-so do this? It's not as easy as just calling up the manager and saying, okay, we're doing this today. There's a lot that goes into this. The process isn't 2 weeks, is it, Patrick? Just explain to the viewers so they know this isn't.
He just presses Command R and reissue. Just starts popping.
Oh, that's what it is? Okay, Patrick.
Command LZ.
No, it's Command R, Patrick, and then Led Zeppelin.
LZ, yeah, Command LZ.
Yeah. Right. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying, and we probably touch on this on most every show I do with you, we would do Led Zeppelin in a heartbeat.
Oh, we know. Yeah.
It's on our dream list. We're always trying. Jimmy Page is very hands-on, and it's really hard to get anything out. I mean, we've tried to do 50th anniversary releases of things just even kind of straight, and that's, we did some
even with his
graffiti.
mastering.
Yeah, but we did some physical graffiti releases for the 50th, and he did allow that, but he didn't really, we weren't able to do a lot with it. We'd love to do a hi-fi, and if it ever is able to happen, we would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And we
command #LZ.
LZ, there you go. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that we've been.
I try every day.
Let's get this going.
They've blocked me. Patrick Eves blocked me already. I don't know.
If it weren't for that restraining order, this would be done already.
No, I mean, jeez. That Westman. Who's this Westman guy from Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that. We want to do a lot more Black Sabbath, of course. That always does well. And with Ozzy's unfortunate passing recently, of course, we can't be too pushy with the Kevin. We can't be too pushy with the estate. So, we're doing what we can. We've got a bunch of other exciting things that we're hoping to do. Several box sets that, if these things happen, people are going to be blown away.
So box sets, hi-fi side or reserve side?
Yes, hi-fi.
Is there going to be reserve box sets ever?
There could be at some point.
Mm-hmm. And then, how's the reel-to-reels going? Are you guys happy with the success of the first two?
We are. They're doing well. Yeah,
so
we're looking at some more. So.
I was going to say, so does that mean if maybe then you guys will do a few more now based on how the first two went?
Planning on it.
Cool. And then Black Sabbath. Get them out there, Patrick. I know. Well, you already mentioned there's going to be 2 next year at some point. So.
Well, if we can.
So no, that's not for sure, right? That's what.
Well, again, it's always sort of us negotiating with management, who have been obviously pretty cooperative, but things have sort of changed in their world. So
Easter egg chronological.
Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
No, because we've already done 2 albums.
Okay. So we'll see what happens for this.
It would be individual titles.
I can make chronological as in you started with self-titled, then we go each album.
That's
after that.
Yeah, in terms of hi-fis, that's my idea, but there are some other things that are happening in terms of anniversaries and things that might pull that out of whack a little bit. We'll see.
Oh, okay. So are you anticipating a pretty big year in the Rhino HiFi in 2026?
I am.
It's like bigger than this year?
Yeah, because we've got releases almost
Syd. Every month we're having releases. We're gonna have a lot of shows.
Pretty much.
I think we're having a lot of shows. Is that what you're trying to say?
Could be, yeah.
Ooh.
But yeah, it's we're trying to get it going, and we've got more reels in mind. So,
well, since I have you on it, there's the Beatles fan. Hey,
there's the Giant Steps last night.
I can give my personal thumbs up. So
nice.
That was awesome.
How old is he?
20.
There you go. Perfect. That's the age you want to sort of attract, right? Exactly that. One thing too, I know we're getting to the top of the hour. Big announcement a few weeks back. Rhino and Acoustic Sounds are partnering up for the Rhino 45 RPM series. That was huge news, Patrick. I think we got a lot of positive feedback from viewers when they did a few shows.
It's been kind of an ongoing thing that started with the actual 75th anniversary, and they're sort of rolling it out over several years. But there's some good titles in that for sure.
Well, and I am assuming too, from a price point, it would probably be the same as when they did the Atlantic 75, like that $60 to $65 sort of range for 2 LP 45 RPM. That seems to be the real price point right now in the industry, I feel, for consumers.
Yeah, probably so. Well, I mean, I think part of the reason we've done well with hi-fi is because we were able to establish a pretty friendly price point in the audiophile market. So that's, we sometimes look at like, well, somebody else did a double 45 or a UHQR or something. It's like, well, for hundreds of dollars, yeah, but for $40, we can probably still get some people that didn't buy those. And as you well know, there's a lot of people that buy them all and compare them and do shootouts. And
we do that. It's fun.
And we're not aiming for that. It's not like, oh, we're going to try to make people buy this 5 times. It's just, this is a good title. It has some potential. It doesn't really step on the toes of things that have come before or that are coming after. So.
With Van Morrison coming up at 45 RPM, I think someone was asking about the Moon Dance cut digitally. Was there a reason for that choice?
Yeah, the Moondance tapes are not good.
So digital it was.
Yeah, we have a few things like that. We did the Emmylou Harris HiFi a while back. And my first choice was to do the first album, then the second album.
I have the first album. I love the first album.
Oh, it's so good. Both they're all good, but the first two albums just were not really, the tapes weren't usable. So
I love the Easter eggs. Syd, we got some Easter eggs out of Patrick today. I'm loving it. Full hard-boiled ones too.
Who doesn't love a great Easter egg?
Especially on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
One of the viewers said, Steve, some of the viewers are probably already passed out. That's probably what they're doing. Or they're watching football or too much football. They're probably like, oh my God, I need a break here watching too much football all day.
Yeah, go listen to some Coltrane.
Absolutely. Okay, so Coltrane, is it on the website tomorrow? I think we should tell the folks.
Yes, tomorrow it will start shipping.
And it's numbered, you were saying.
It is numbered. Yep.
My box it says 2000.
Oh, you're right. Mine does too. You're right.
You got the last one.
Well, mine isn't 2000. I'm just saying it says so it's 2000. So it's
0, 0, 0, 0 out of 2000.
That's 2000 copies.
That's what I got too.
The box it's beautiful. The fabric.
Oh, I know.
It's as anyone who may be watching who bought the Tubby Hayes Fontana box that came out maybe 7-8 years ago. Same fabric, same vibe, and it's great and it holds up beautifully. Nice choice. More, please.
More, Patrick.
Oh, we're gonna.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This was awesome. Pick up Coltrane box tomorrow before they're all gone, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Makes a great Christmas gift, Hanukkah gift,
Absolutely.
Easter egg gift.
You know, it's crazy. Christmas is less than a month away now.
No.
I know.
Hanukkah even less.
So tomorrow's Black Friday. You guys loading up on gifts?
Not really. I'm not a big Black Friday guy. I haven't been to Record Store Day in ages.
Yeah.
I will admit I do want that Dylan Freewheelin' though.
This is the box Atlantic red. That's interesting. Is that what that's supposed to be?
It wasn't the intent, but I like that.
I like that, Sean. It's very smart.
Great question.
Well, our designer Rachel started off doing some things at recommendations that were a little bit more bland. And when I pointed out that the previous mono box was done in a brown cover, she's like, "Oh yeah, we need to move away from that." And she came to me with this red.
Good.
Thing. That's it. It's beautiful. It's so great.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone from the U.S. who's watching. Awesome. I'm excited. About some of the titles coming up too, Patrick, from Rhino HiFi. It's going to be great.
Too.
Syd Schwartz, find him at Jazz and Coffee.
Thanks,
on
Syd.
Instagram as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Have a great day.
Those notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye, guys.
Well.